Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. Why are my lights tripping? Fantastic. Well, I hope no one watching has has epilepsy. What is this? Of course, the first live stream back wouldn't be something nice and smooth. Huh. Well, I think there's probably too much power being sucked out by the lights, the live stream setup, and everything else I have going on up here. So I guess we're just gonna be doing this with one light bulb. That's okay. We will get by. Let's see here. I see Jim Lujan in the chat. How you doing, Jim? How's it going? Just putting on a crazy light show in the dark here. Yeah, I'll have to figure out what's up with this. But for now, let's get into some drawing. And being that I've been away from my regular creative practice lately, I've noticed how soft I'm getting on the fundamentals. Just basic proportion, volume, construction. These are all things that I have found, for me personally, if I don't practice them regularly, the skills start slipping. So what we're going to do is something I haven't done in a while. But so I'm a subscriber to a website called Line of Action, and they're kind of like characterposes.com, in that you can go in there and you can set a timer and work from models, photos of reference models for a specific amount of time. So on this, I have decided, I'm going to do some head studies, and I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes. So we'll see how this goes. I'm just going to do 5-minute poses, and if questions come up, maybe I'll pause as I'm going, since it's a timed session. Let me just switch to a figure drawing brush. As always, the trusty Lane Brown charcoal pencil pack, and let's go. All right. If I do a few of these and I find that 5 minutes just isn't enough, then I might stop and restart this as 8-minute poses, because it really is challenging to get the fundamental construction of the head down in just 5 minutes. And I can tell that his head is turned just ever so slightly to the left, because if you look at his ears, you can see more of the right ear than the left ear. It's almost a straight-on view, but it's just slightly turned. And those are the poses that I have the most trouble with. Because if it's just a 3/4 turn, if it's a 3/4 view or profile or straight on, those are very specific angles. They're dramatic angles. It's almost like, I don't want to say I can draw them on autopilot, but you draw those angles enough, and you start you well, yeah, I guess it is autopilot. You start using sort of the fundamental template you've built in your head for what a three-quarter, egg shape or sphere looks like, and then you just build the figure around that slightly turned form. But when you have, well, not slightly turned, but you build it around those forms, the profile, the three-quarter, and the front view. And also, I realized I have to tip his head back more. And see, these are the kind of things that trip me up as I'm going. This is the point where I start seeing flaws already, proportion flaws. And I need to go back in, erase stuff, and fix them. Like the space between his brow and his nose is not as broad as it's not as long as it tends to be for a lot of other figures. So I need to come back in and fix that. Drop his ears down a little bit because, again, like I said, head tilted back. So the top of the ears are just about level with the top of the cheekbones. Let's see there. I see my boy Paul Pate in the chat. How you doing, Paul? I might not put as many comments up on the screen as I'm doing this because, to be honest, timed figure drawing plus managing the comments is a little bit challenging. You guys have finally reached you've found the limits of my live streaming capabilities. I can talk and draw. I can run comments, but I can't do timed figure and comments and draw at the same time. You've broken me. You have broken me. All right. I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse to have that little timer in the bottom corner. You know what? Yeah, you guys can see it too. I was about to say I didn't know if you guys would be able to see it or if it's just me, but yeah, that little timer there letting me know how much time I have left. On one hand, when you're drawing the figure, it's real easy to be like, well, how much time is left? How much time is left? And you keep stressing about the time, and it keeps you from focusing. But when you can look over there and see how much time is left, I don't know if that's really any better in terms of being distracted. Four and three and two and one. And that's the end of one session. Oh, I just realized I was drawing all up in the middle of the screen. Let's move that over there. I should at least take up the whole area I have to work from. You know what? All right, I'm going to pause this because Jim always asks the most scintillating questions. Let's see here. Jim says celebrity crush, Paul Pate. And Paul says, I'm surprised you made it this far. Yeah, I mean, well, a 5-minute pose. Part of this, again, I have to thank Carl Ganas for years of taking his heads, hands, and feet class, because he really trains students to get the basic structure down and then build the features on top of that. But he really is focused on getting that. If you don't get the head, the direction the head is tilted, facing, and and just the basic volumes, you don't get those things down in the beginning, like nothing else is really going to matter. And that's been a big help, the type of training that he does. Let's see here. So Jim asks for GB. Do you feel like you draw better when pressed for time? And he says no. Less second guessing, more flow because it's necessary, flow state. Absolutely not. I'm going to let the timer keep running while I answer this question because I think I can think about it while I'm drawing. I do not draw better when I'm pressed for time and I'm in a flow state. But what I do get is more energy, more spontaneity. And a lot of times, what I'll find is I'll have a drawing where there are a lot of anatomical details that are off, proportions off. Um, you know, well, sometimes I'll just have a limb that just is doing something that is not what the figure was really doing. And I'll notice at like the last like 30 seconds of the pose, I'm like, oh wait, their arm was here instead of there. Their leg was resting on top of something, was a little bit higher. But what I will find is that the energy, when I go back to redraw those drawings, the energy and the spontaneity that I get from drawing a time session, I can never recapture that. That spontaneity is just something that happens. And I will tell you that it will happen to a degree in a session like this, but it is much more present when I'm working from a live model, whether it's doing an online session through Zoom, but definitely when I'm in person at a workshop. There's something about being in a room with a live human being that really helps you capture something that you can't just get looking at a photo. So for me also, part of the my practice is not just doing the drawing, but it's going back and that whole fixing bad figure drawing thing that I do. That's like I'm not doing that just for a goof or like it's a gimmick. I learn way more by taking my bad drawings and redrawing them than I do by doing the actual drawing in the first place. And the idea is that I want to train myself to develop enough sense of structure and volume and observation that, when I go back and I redraw the figures, whether it's heads or full body, my goal is simply understand what it is that I got wrong when I was in the moment doing those spontaneous drawings. And over time, what I have found is the more that I do that, the better the spontaneous drawings, the better the structure becomes. So it's like I'm trying to merge a very well studied, patient, carefully measured, carefully lit drawing with the spontaneous energy of working from life in a time session. Both of them have their strengths. And the more that I do both of them, the more I merge them. And also, the more that I sit down and I redraw those drawings that didn't come out well, what happens is over time, as I'm going and I'm fixing those mistakes, I'm trying to, in these longer drawings, I may take a 5-minute or an 8-minute sketch and redraw it like 3 or 4 times. And each time it's like I'm drawing it for twice as long, 10 or 15 minutes, while I'm analyzing, redrawing, erasing, trying different things. And what happens is hopefully over time, I'm also looking for that spontaneous energy and trying to figure out how do I get that spontaneity into a drawing that's a little bit longer and more studied. And it's like I'm trying to fuse them into one. Like often, throughout my life, I have found that artists tend to fall into two categories: those who can draw from imagination instinctively, and those who can draw from observation instinctively. Like, I know many artists who are like human cameras and they can just look at something and replicate it, copy it. It's like having a photographic memory with the pencil. They can get it exactly right. They've got great proportions. But if you ask them to draw a dragon or a race car, or just draw a picture of a friend that they know well or a family member from memory, they're screwed. And that's because, they're two different parts of the brain. Now, I'm not saying this like scientifically like James Gurney would, where I could tell you the parts of the brain, but the idea of imagining a figure or a person or whatever it is, and just drawing it out of your head is not the same as drawing from observation. And for people who have no real interest in comics and are just, want to appreciate the beauty of the world around them, they really don't care about being able to make up stuff out of your head. I mean, that's why you have so many people who really have a strong preference for sight size drawing, because imaginative drawing just doesn't, it's not like they're like, oh, imaginative drawing sucks. It's just, it's not a tool that they need. They're not making shit up. So if they just want to look at the world, it's the same as a photographer taking, beautiful photos. But then you also have photographers that use fill lights and have cameras to, I mean, not cameras, they'll have fans, they can have wind blowing with the model. If you look like fashion photography, commercial photography, where people are creating special effects and they're manipulating the world and the environment around them, that's where they need to have imagination. But where I'm going with this is in the same way that I'm trying to merge the benefits of fast time drawing with long study drawing. I think that there's a powerful correlation between those who can draw from imagination and can just make, because that's the thing, I've always been somebody who was great at making shit up and making it look, oh well, this is, I can draw a giant robot fighting a kaiju, but if you ask me to sit there and draw a flower in a rose garden that's right in front of me, I will find it challenging because my brain doesn't really work from observation. My brain sort of draws from the inside out. But the artists who I believe have the most power at their disposal, regardless of how they use it or how successful they are, but the ones I think that are the most powerful are the artists that have both abilities. And I don't think I've ever met an artist who is naturally good at both. What I usually find is artists are good at one or the other, and then realize that there's power in having both abilities, and they've worked to get better at whichever one they struggle with. And I will look at the comments again in a second. But what is interesting is, I don't think that this is coming out like any kind of masterpiece, but already moving from the first one to the second, well, to this third drawing now, the amount of time that I have, I made that eyebrow too thick. It's like, yes, the time is going by quickly, but in a strange way, it's kind of slowing down as I'm going. Where the first one, it seemed like it went by instantaneously, and now it feels like I'm like, okay, I can actually get a little bit of structure down. Although this feels real wonky. I think I went into the features too soon. I really should have spent a little bit more time on the structure. And that's another thing that I want to learn to get better at, is correcting drawings on the fly. Because when a drawing is complete and you're looking at it, like, even if it's just something like this where I stopped, if I didn't move on to the next drawing, I could take this picture of this guy's head and say, all right, I'm going to spend the rest of the session fixing the problems with this drawing. And I could probably just redraw him 2 or 3 times over the rest of this stream, playing with the proportion, trying to get the structure down, then actually trying to play with likeness and features. because all of those feel like kind of specific phases of the drawing for me. Oh, and that's done. I didn't even get around to getting his beard in there. All right, let me pause and come back to the questions. This is what happened when I leave you guys alone in the chat. I can't leave Jim and Paul alone for nothing. Jim is like, flow state. Paul's like, is flow state your rapper name? Yes. And Paul says, my favorite song is 99 Problems and a Flow State Ain't One. And Paul also says, I love these quick sketch studies. Need more of this in my life. You know, I'll tell you, the the website Line of Action, it's a free website. So it's line-of-action.com. And they have a lot of photos you can see for free. You get access to a wider library when you have a subscription. I signed up because the subscription is like $2 a month. And I want services like this to exist. That's the main reason. I'm not necessarily subscribing for the extra features I get by being a member. It's because they're providing something of value that I don't want to go away. I don't want to see this site around for a couple of years and they run out of money. They're like, yeah, well, it was a good run. We fold up. It's a service that even though they're making it available for free, I believe it's a service that's worth supporting. So you can get on there and you can do studies like these as well. And I mean, hell, if you guys want to sketch along with me, please do. Let's see here. Paul says, I love these quick. Oh, yeah, I already did that one. And you said, I feel like I'd really struggle with that third pose. I'm going to do one on the side and send it. Hey, yeah, send it on over. I'll check it out. In fact, let me know what platform you're sending it to, because maybe I can pull it up and toss it on here while we're working. And, I will tell you before I start the next session, a lot of these, the big challenge for me is just getting, like, I'm going to draw a simple cube in here, is just saying, all right, this head is facing slightly to the left and slightly up. This one is turned more to the left and not way down, but dramatically facing farther down than the other. And then this one is facing all the way to the left and up and almost turning away, almost. And just getting these simple, just getting the main surfaces, the front, the side, and top or bottom facing the right direction. That's like, for me, that's 90% of the battle, even though it all happens in this very beginning session. Like in the very first, 30 seconds of the pose is when I'm locking that down. But then even once I do that, what I need to do is I need to stop going into eyebrows and facial hair and beard. And I need to really get back to locking in the primitive, like the next steps being like kind of like the slope of the skull, the muzzle of the mouth, doing all of these things, locking those in before I start putting features on. I'm rushing ahead too soon. And hey, sorry for the delay in getting to the comments, but Colors Doodle says, great job on those heads, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. I see Herman in the chat says, hey, G and peeps, hope all is well. Thank you. And Colors Doodle says, you are moving pretty quick. I'm trying. I mean, it's interesting because it's not that I feel like I'm humble. I've taken enough figure drawing classes with enough amazing artists that when I look at what I can get in 5 minutes or 8 minutes, I personally am not particularly impressed with my speed. I've had a chance to draw alongside some tremendous, phenomenal artists that can make like masterpieces in the times that I really get like, just very simple sketches blocked in. But I appreciate the kind words and thank you. I appreciate the encouragement. In fact, one of the reasons why I like doing studies like these on live streams and doing them public is because I kind of want other artists to see the unevenness. Because we've seen that, we've had this whole conversation in social media about like you're comparing your average work to other people's highlight reels and their best work and their amazing stuff, and it can create a little bit of like self-consciousness or just feeling like we're not good enough. And I kind of want to share that, like, I'll do a session when I go into a figure drawing workshop or I'm doing a Zoom session. Out of like a 3-hour class or 3-hour workshop, I'll maybe do one drawing per hour, that out of like one or two drawings the whole night that I don't hate. Most of them are horrible, and I don't feel bad about them being horrible because, like I said earlier, I sit down and I study the horrible drawings. Let's see here. This made me laugh. Jim says, just be honest with me now. Are you AI? And I'm like, you know what's crazy? I saw something the other day, an article where there was like this this Spanish social media influencer, like this gym rat social media influencer, and she's all AI. They have photos and videos of her, and they look like kind of Instagram-y. Like, here's kind of the products I use and stuff I make, but she's all AI. It's so goddamn creepy. I'd have to think that if I were AI, I'd just be a little bit more chiseled, a little more chiseled looking, a little more rugged. My voice would be deeper. I have a little bit more bass in my voice. Broader shoulders. I wouldn't have a flickering light that shuts out in the middle of my stream. They're just, Jim, nice try, Jim, but this would just overall be better. It'd be better if I were AI. But see, it's the human flaws that make reality worthwhile. That's where the humanity is. I'm human because I fuck up. Let's hear. Colors Doodle says, I use that same website, Line of Action. Says it's really good even on free mode. Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, is please, if this at all looks like it's interesting to you or fun, or you're like, oh, this would help me get better, go on over there and start using it. It's great. Let's see. Paul says he sent the drawing. I'm going to open another screen. And Paul, did you send it to my email? Did you send it to my Discord? Let's see here. I am looking. Let's see here. And Colors Doodle and Paul are getting acquainted. Paul says, I'm AI. And Facebook Messenger. Let me see here. All right. Let me go to ye old Facebook. Before I pull that up, let me answer Herman's question real quick. Herman says, what software and tool are you using to sketch the texture to simulate a charcoal pencil type? Well, I am drawing on an iPad Pro. The software I'm using is Procreate, and I am using a brush pack, and it is by an artist named Lane Brown, and it's called the Charcoal Master Pack. And I believe you can buy this either from Lane Brown's website, or you can buy it from Proco.com, because Proco had a deal on it. I think Lane Brown had done some demos for them. But Lane Brown, here, let me write it. It's just Lane Brown Charcoal Master Pack. And I don't get a kickback or anything for recommending it, but I have found out of all of the digital brushes for Procreate, this one is the best. I really like it a lot. Now, I will tell you that from what I've seen of other people, I haven't used um, I haven't used Clip Studio Paint for the iPad, and a lot of people swear by it. So I will say that if you want to give that a try, in terms of emulating traditional media, I've definitely seen people get results I think are a little bit more convincing. I just really like the interface of Procreate, and I've really enjoyed using it. So that's something else to consider. But if you're on Procreate or even Photoshop, I think they have it now so that the brushes used on Photoshop, Procreate, and Clip Studio Paint, they all use sort of the same format. So you should be able to use this, I think, for any of them. But that's the tool and the brush pack I'm using. And so yeah, and the nice thing is you can go in here and there's a great brush called the General, which is named after General's charcoal brushes, which is what I use in terms of physical media. And but the brush was very, very big. And a lot of these are designed for using large digital canvases, like maybe 5,000, 6,000 pixels. And I found that even when I shrunk the brush down, it was kind of like the range between the thick and the thin was kind of off for me. So I just duplicated one of the brushes and shrunk it down and made one that I call a mini Generals. But there's a whole lot of excellent brushes in here. And I did a whole thing where I sat down and I just went through brush by brush and just drew a little head with each of them to get a sense of what they do. But anyway, let's see here. Oh, hey, this is nice. Gonna send this onto the screen. Now, this is so friggin' surreal because the image has my image in it. But I think you did a good job with this, Paul. I think that you got more of well, you got the hair and the beard in there. Definitely, you got more of the character in the figure. And why is this not letting me do what I want? Oh, 'cause that's why. Um, yeah, I just need to send this over to the iPad. I was not particularly prepared for this. That's why this is taking so goddamn long. Um, oh, crap. Okay, well, that might be a pain in the ass. Because I need to turn on my Wi-Fi in order to send this photo to my iPad. But the reason why my Wi-Fi is off is specifically because the live stream works really, really poorly with Wi-Fi on. But anyway, just to share with everybody else. So yeah, this is Paul's sketch of the same head. And where mine is kind of blocky, you can see that Paul's is way more organic and really does capture the feel and the personality. So, and I'll tell you, the blockiness is something that, yeah, no, you totally. He said, Paul says, I did better than I thought I'd do. I think this is a fantastic sketch. I like it. Um, Paul says, don't worry, keep drawing. See, I'm stubborn, as my wife loves to remind me. And once I set my mind to doing something, I'm like, I'm going to figure it out. All right, let me go back to, wait, is this, okay. I mean, I saw a different face in there. I was like, why did it keep playing? Oh, I thought it was fantastic. See, Herman says, says it's cool. No Rebel 6. I'm using to simulate or respond in real life for all mediums, like it's on canvas or paper. I've heard of Rebel and I have never tried it. I will put that on the mental list. Although honestly, I've gotten a little bit more of. See, I used to be like every time there's a new tool, I want to come out and try it, and then I ended up chasing all these different things and never getting good at anything. And now I'm swinging in the pendulum the other way, where it's like I've got my tool set, it's working for me. I'm just going to use this. So I try to stay open-minded to other software and other tools, but I am mostly, more focused on doing this kind of thing. You know what? And I'll tell you, we could always do a session if Paul, if you ever want to join, we can do a session where I can bring this up and maybe we could use what is the name of that site that they use on it's not Krita. Um but there's a site Magma, that's what it's called. Schoolism, Bobby Chu and his crew, they use this website called Magma, and it creates a canvas that people can draw together at the same time on. So maybe we can set up a stream where we can work on a Magma canvas, and like on one side we'll have the screen, the reference playing, and we can all just kind of hang out and draw while we're doing it. That might be fun. I'm not saying we're doing that next week, but I'm going to throw that in my mental Rolodex of things to do for the future. In fact, let me make a note here also. Group drawing. Let's see here. And James says, I'm not sure about what to do when drawing the same thing over and over causes me to be bored. and by the way, Jim said, nice, Paul, which I agree, very nice. And Paul says, thanks. And he says, I've seen that, the Magma software. That'd be awesome. So at some point in the future, and by the way, also just make sure everyone sees, you're getting a lot of love there. Colors Doodle says that's very nice, a very nice likeness, very organic. And I threw James' comment up. I didn't even say hi, welcome, good to see you, James. It's like I've in all of this busy drawing, I forgot my manners. Well, James says, I'm not sure what to do when drawing the same thing over and over causes me to feel bored. Well, before I move on to the next drawing, let me go in here and do. So you guys have seen me do the fixing bad figure drawing video before. For me, when I am drawing the same thing over and over again, I don't think, first off, I don't think it's unreasonable for you to get bored. I think the idea of novelty, always moving on to something new and exciting and having something interesting to explore, is one of the strong motivators for creative people. So I don't think there's anything weird or wrong about that. The way that I handle that type of boredom, the reason why I don't get bored is because for me, I always try to turn negatives into positives. And when I look at the drawing that Paul and I both drew, and like I said, even though I have a very positive attitude about it, all I see are the mistakes I made. So as opposed to being bored about drawing this a second time, I look at it more kind of like when you're playing a video game and you make it through the level, but you didn't do any of the side quests. Because I completed the goal, which was I drew that dude's head. But I look at like where the proportions off. I look at where the anatomy's off. I look at the places where there is structure in the sense that it's a cube, it's a three-dimensional form, but it doesn't have structure in terms of an actual human skull. And I'm sitting here saying, all right, how do I make this cheekbones feel like they're actually there? How do I respect not just the bones, but the muzzle and how the mouth protrudes out from the skull. Um, how do I get the proportion so that his face does feel? Let me go back one so that the guy's face is on the screen while I'm redrawing it, because I think that it's worthwhile to compare just how off my drawing was. Um, but well, no, that it's not a but. The reason why I want you guys to be able to see how off my drawing was is in direct relation to James's question or his point about getting bored with drawing the same thing over and over again. Because it's one thing to make a drawing, to finish a drawing. It's another thing to make a drawing and say, I nailed that. The anatomy feels great. The volume feels great. The proportions are great. The likeness is great. It doesn't feel stiff. It feels kind of energetic and lifelike. Those are all things in an ideal world, every drawing would have that. So the reason why I'm not bored is because I didn't do all the things that I set out to do. I did one thing. I made a drawing of a person's face. And, that's not to belittle anybody, because drawing is hard. But I did that one drawing, and now it's like, now is the time for me to roll up my sleeves. Now is where the actual work of going from a drawing that does the bare minimum to actually bringing in artistic craft and skill and saying, all right, how do I make this a better work? That's where all of this is beginning now. Like, I'm just barely getting into this. In fact, here, it's a little bit of a cheat, but I'm gonna enlarge this head a little bit so I have a little bit more room to work with. And for me, being able to look at that previous drawing I did while I'm doing this and see all of the things that I'm improving, that's what keeps me from getting bored. I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh, wow, I didn't do, like just the actual structure, the way that I've got the cheekbones defined in this second sketch versus the first sketch. And also, mind you, this is going a lot longer than the 5 minutes that the first one did. But at the same time, there is more, which is in this sketch now, it's a better drawing. I am happier with how the results are coming out. But I actually have the head faced too far down. The head should be faced up a little bit more, and it should be faced, well, actually here, that's showing you what it's doing now. This drawing should be faced slightly more to the right, and his head should be turned slightly more upward, not eye level, but I have him looking down too far. And these are all things that, to go back to the idea of getting bored with this, I would keep, even though I know that this drawing is wrong, I would keep working on this drawing and finish it, take it all the way to fixing as many mistakes as I can, even with those structural things being off. Then I would start a third drawing, trying to redraw it again now and getting the angle of the head, the positioning in space correct. So I don't know if that's useful for you, James, because like I said, getting bored with doing the same thing over and over, if I'm not learning anything, then yeah, I'm gonna be bored. So I don't know if the idea here is if you have to draw something more than once to really question the drawing and say, well, what else can I learn here? Because I think repetition for repetition's sake is pointless and it's useless. It's like memorizing facts out of a history book instead of like understanding like the human cost of a historical event and hearing the stories of the people involved and what they sacrificed and getting into like the deeper meanings and the repercussions of things. I think that the same is true with art. Like if you're just doing rote memorization of muscles and bones, that's not, that's not creative. They're tools that you can use in your creativity, but it's not particularly creative. So the question then becomes developing that skill of being able to analyze your work and ask yourself, what have I learned from this? Or what can I learn from this? And that's one of the reasons why I am so like not upset about doing crappy drawings, because every single bad drawing I do is another opportunity for me to grow and learn and see things I didn't see before. Like, I mean, it's easy now in looking at this that you can both say, all right, this drawing is more finished. See, but I also didn't even draw him smiling. The smile is a big feature of this drawing. I mean, of the photo. And I did not even draw him smiling. And I honestly don't think I left enough space between his mustache, between his upper lip and the bottom of his beard. I don't think I really left enough space in there for what we see in his actual face. But I mean, this whole time I was talking, I have not looked up at the comments once. So I am curious, James, if that is helpful at all, or whether you're like, dude, I'm still bored. I don't want to draw the same shit over and over again. Because I think that that's a fair response. But the way I look at it is if I'm doing something that's repetitive, I am also asking myself, why am I doing it? Not in a this is pointless, but am I really getting out of this something that is useful? Am I getting out what I intend to get out of this? So, all right. I'm gonna go through, catch up on the comments, and then I think I'm gonna do the next head, which is a really pain in the ass pose. That actually, no, I realized I don't know why I'm trying to rush. It feels late because I started late. I started maybe about 15 minutes later than usual. So we'll keep going for a bit. Let me scroll back up to top of, from where I left off in the comments. Let's see here. Paul says, what I'd like to do is some serious portrait and figure studies, then have Jim draw over them and make them funny. Um, you know what? Why not do the opposite? Why not have Jim draw some cartoony figures and then do your interpretation of them? Do some fan art of like if like Adam Hughes doing the cover for a for those Looney Tunes comics that they were doing, DC was doing a few years back, where they had like Hong Kong Phooey and Snagglepuss and all those, and like Batman versus Elmer Fudd. Doing a that would be I think that might actually be interesting. It goes both ways. Maybe Jim does a cartoony version of a portrait of yours, and you do a more serious version of like John Henry Unicorn. Maybe I'll do a John Henry Unicorn fan art. Maybe that'll be the thing for next session. We'll see. Let's hear. Herman says, word. Right now I have CS4. I think Rebel will be my only software. Photoshop costs too much. It's whack that you have to subscribe to these software companies. But free outsource it is. It's funny. I was very against the Photoshop subscriptions, and I was using CS. I think CS5 was the last version before they went subscription. And I was using that until the laptop that I had could no longer do software updates, and I had to switch over. And once I did, I well, going freelance, I had to go. I For a long time I was just using instead of Photoshop, I was using Affinity. I was using the Affinity suite, Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher, and I was very, very happy with them. They did not have all of the features that Adobe has, but for the price and the functionality, I definitely thought it was a very, very reasonable Adobe replacement. But having to transfer back and forth between Photoshop files and the native format of the Affinity files was just kind of a not a deal breaker, but it made things much harder. So when I went freelance, I was like, all right, screw it. It's a business cost. I'm just gonna bite down and sign up for the subscription. I've been pretty happy with it right now. Let's see here. Um, I'm leaving Jim's political comment off the stream because I don't even want to stir up that pot. I ain't stirring it, Jim. I'm gonna just let that pot. I'm gonna let that pot bubble on the back burner. I ain't touching it. Let's see here. Paul says, "What about what about this guy's Adam's apple?" I mean, it's not the biggest Adam's apple I've seen, but it's notable. It's there. Let's see here. Herman says it would be cool to sit and sketch with the peeps. Is that only for people that are on Patreon? Because eventually I'd have to figure out what tier I can afford to do so with the group. Well, you know what? I think I will try doing one that's kind of like open to everybody. It does sound like it would be a good Patreon reward. And maybe what I'll do is I might do one that's sort of for everybody, and then one that's just Patreon. Because I find the nice thing about the Patreon live streams is even if I don't have as many people on, becomes a lot more of like, oh, I'm just having a one-on-one conversation with another artist, and we're actually talking instead of chatting. So I might end up trying to do both. One session is kind of for everybody to jump in, and then one session that's just specifically, you know, just specifically for the gang. Let's see here. Oh, and back to the conversation about getting bored drawing the same thing over and over. James says entertaining ideas can help too. I completely agree. If you're drawing something that's interesting, even if you have to do it multiple times, that's going to make a huge difference. He says, I may want to spend time on a face that looks unusual. I had to draw faces a few times to get the hang of them since my approach needed work. I mean, hell, obviously, as you can see, I will draw the same face over and over and over again. So yeah, drawing faces multiple times, not just a single face, but like I only got through three heads plus the redraw. Normally, when I'm in a figure drawing class, we're either doing 5-minute poses or 8-minute poses, at least with Carl Ganas with his head, hands, and feet class. So in one class, if it's all 5-minute poses, you'll end up doing 10 head drawings an hour. So you'll end up with like 30 drawings of the same model from different angles in one night. Well, not 30, because usually there'll be a half hour of lecture and then a half hour or an hour of correcting people's work. But you'll get a good 15, maybe 20 drawings of a person per night. So, that's very much, and I have found whether it's the full body or the head, anytime I'm drawing someone that I haven't drawn before or haven't drawn in a while, it takes a good, 4 or 5 drawings just to understand their features, to get a sense of them as a person. It's like playing a sport or playing poker against somebody. It takes a while to get to know them. I think that's very true. I mean, the portrait drawing is a very intimate experience. You're trying to capture not just a likeness, but a sense of the person. And to be honest, I think that capturing a person, I've done drawings where it did not look like the person, but it had the vibe such that anyone who looked at it knew who it was. And I think that that's more powerful and more important than just doing a drawing that looks exactly like the person. So let's see here. And James says, I think it's helpful. Well, good, good. I'm glad it's not just me spewing nonsense. Paul says, love all the insights, so thoughtful. Kind of you to say. I try. Um, Herman says, I'm still trying to get used to daylight savings, bro. I'm all jacked up. I hate daylight savings so much. I hate it, hate it, hate it. In fact, I had heard that like California, where I live, that we had said, a couple of years ago, they had voted to not do daylight savings anymore. And I'm like, what happened with that? What up, bro? What up, Gavin? Where's our clock staying the same? Nothing. I'm just like, I mean, we don't live on a farm anymore. And even farmers are just like, you know what? Nowadays, the problem is it used to be a pain in the ass to change clocks. Now it's really easy to just set your alarm an hour earlier. Way easier. Let's see here. Oh, Herman says, please sit up Jeremy's likes. We're always here. LOL. Thank you. I don't say that enough during the stream. Yes, definitely. Please hit the like buttons. If anyone's watching who's new, hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to have you back and see you whenever we do more streams. And Jim, yes, he says, please do a John Henry Unicorn fan art. I'll use it in the Unicornians as a background painting. All right. Well, hell, but I'll make a note for, I'll have to grab some ref for next week. So maybe that's what we'll do for next week's stream. Let's see here. And Paul says, Roger that, Jim. That redraw is really nice. James also agrees. I wish daylight savings would end. Paul also down with that. And James says, I don't mind it getting darker later, though. And that's the funny thing. I am completely fine. I don't care which way you leave the clocks. I don't like the changing. I don't like it messing up my sleep schedule. Whatever it is, leave it. Just leave the clocks. Leave them alone. I don't care whether it's the sun getting up earlier or the sun going down later. Whatever it is, pick one. I don't care which. And Herman says the sun is up in Baltimore. It's almost 8:15 p.m. It's weird, bro. Wow. I mean, that is actually, as it gets into late summer, that does get pretty surreal. All right. I'm going to start the timer back up again with this very, very difficult pose. This is one of those poses that, all right. Is this okay? So the clock is running. The clock is ticking. Tick, tick, tick. So again, the hardest part for me is just getting those measurements down, the preliminary structure of the head. So I'm almost trying to treat this as if I were carving out of stone. Like if I had just a big block of marble, and I were just sort of, originally it started off as if I had just started off as a box, and then I'm like, all right, I'm going to carve edges off of the box to make it kind of like oblong, head shaped. Except I can add to the box by having little ears poke out. I have the neck come down. Like, yeah, you want to talk about difficult angles. This is a difficult ass angle. And then trying to place where the bottom of the cheekbones are. And then I'm trying to kind of box in the muzzle. I have the nose sitting on the top of the muzzle. And when I say the muzzle, what I'm referring to is not just the mouth itself, but the part of the mouth the part of the skull that projects forward. I'm circling that big, and I'm going to undo that. But that's what I mean when I say the muzzle. Carl Ganas has some really great demos on his YouTube channel. And a lot of them are about the figure. I actually need to go look and see if he has any that are on drawing the skull, because I have him to thank for everything I know about drawing the skull. Even though I draw it a lot blockier than I think he would like. He's been on me for years about softening up and being more organic, and I know that he's right, but the figure feels so mushy when I don't use these blocky forms, these angular forms to block everything in. And I feel like a big part of that is just spending more time developing my sense of structure such that it doesn't matter whether I'm using organic forms or blocky forms. They would still feel volumetric and solid. Like I don't know if you guys know Steven Zapata, but he's another guy, another art YouTuber, concept artist and art teacher who I really enjoy his channel and his videos. And he just does whole videos where it'll just be like these weird, crazy organic blobs, and they'll have anatomy in them. They'll have like arms and muscles and teeth and parts sticking out of them. But the drawing itself is not necessarily of like a person. It might be a creature, but sometimes it's just like drawings of stuff, like bodies, but they're well lit. It's like an abstract sculpture, but it's an abstract sculpture made of anatomical forms. And that is, I know you get what you practice. So if I want to make that, then I should practice doing those. And maybe that is a challenge I need to give myself, is to try doing something like his work, because I don't want to, it's not that I want to copy his work. All right. And that was the end of that pose. I'm going to go a little bit longer and just cheat. And I will tell you this. Well, let me flip back now. Now that I look back, see, this is a great one for me to do a deep analysis of. I'm not going to do it today, but I think I have time to do one more drawing, because we're at about an hour, but I can do like one more 5-minute drawing. But the proportions aren't that off, but I can tell that it's like, it feels like all of his face is squished up in the top, as opposed to it just being at an angle. And I have not done what I'm going to describe in a long time, but when I'm working from the figure and I'm trying to make corrections to those figures, my go-to move is, if I really tank a drawing, what I try to do is then say, well, what is the skull, or what are the bones doing? Normally speaking, it works a lot better with the figure, but even with just heads, to redraw this exact pose, but to just draw it with a skull. And I'm looking around my studio trying to figure out where my skull is, because I have a skull, like a life-size resin skull, plastic skull. And That's usually my go-to reference that I pull. And this is the kind of pose where it would make sense to set that on a table and light it and work from it. Let's see here. All right. Back on the daylight savings. The spring ahead, fall behind, all nonsense. Herman's like, right, it's rubbish. And Paul says, Herman, I'm in your same time zone, but way on the other end. Sun goes down almost a full hour later. Wow. And Paul says, I think if you try a more organic style, you have to use more exploration lines. I need to practice using more structural blocks. And that is a really great point. In the same way that I was talking about people drawing from imagination versus people that are great at observation, um, an exploratory line versus a structural line. And for those that you know, the example is the scratchy, scribbly, like let's say I'm just drawing this guy and I'm not what? This will be better if I do it on a new drawing. So I'm going to move forward one and I'm going to say, you know what? This is what we'll do for the last pose here. I'm going to do this with an exploratory line versus a structural line. So an exploratory line is literally just the same way that I was trying to sort of carve out a shape and measure proportions. Instead, I'm just sort of like, I'm trying to not even necessarily pick my pencil up. I'm just trying to find where things are, like where they relate to each other, but being very, very loose about it. And I think that there is a lot of power in working like this. Like, I don't think, like, first off, just how much quicker I was able to get to something that feels like the person's head. I mean, and this is one of the reasons why I always say that there isn't that there's so many ways to do this. I am not the type of person who's going to come to any of you and say this is the way to draw. I mean, I'll tell you what I do and why I do it, but there are so many different ways to approach drawing, um, and it's a matter of what are the results that you want and what are the things that you excel at, what are the things that you want to get better at. For me, part of the reason why I am so structural and angular is because I cheat. And when I say I cheat, I know how to put scribble lines down and make them feel kind of cool. And I've always been a big fan of guys like Dave McKean, Bill Sienkiewicz, Ashley Wood, David Mack, all those guys. Um, and I would just, go in and put cool scribbly marks and be like, yeah, it's got energy. It feels cool. But the thing that I realized is that the reason why the artists that I named can be so expressive is because they understand the fundamentals so well that they can imply structure even when they are doing something that is breaking structure and is impressionistic. Even if they're distorting form, they can sell it because they understand what structure really is, how it should look, and how it should feel. And I realized that I did not have the mastery of structure that these artists do. And therefore, I started to pursue structure as kind of my shining light, thinking, well, if I can learn how to do that, then I'll be free to be as expressive as I'd like. Um, I feel like his nose needs to be a little bit longer, and I make his eyes too big. It's like I always draw them like they got anime eyes. Nose longer, eyes smaller. That whole thing about the eyes being the window to the soul, I have a bad habit of making the eyes too big and too prominent. I'm also making this guy look too severe because he doesn't look that serious. Oh, part of it's just the fact that I made his eyebrow curve in, and I've got like all of this bunching up right at where his brow meets instead of letting it be sort of open there. And he looks severe because I made him look severe. Um, but no, I think Paul makes a good point about having a more exploratory line. And while okay, see, now the Adam's apple is calling to me. I want to come in there and get that expressed. I think that there is a lot to be said for a nice linear exploration, really getting in there. And all right, and that's the end of that session. But so like I said, my reason for being so structural and not exploratory is simply because I have always felt that I would make drawings that felt wonky. They might look like they might look interesting, but an interesting drawing is not necessarily a good drawing. And by the same token, you can have a drawing that's well structured but boring as shit. And I want neither. I want a drawing that is interesting, also has good structure in it, and maybe it has good structure even if it's distorted. For instance, I mentioned Steven Zapata earlier. And for those of you who haven't watched his channel, the reason why I bring you back to him again is because if you look at his drawings, they are extremely well structured, even though they are of fantastical forms. It's something that I see in the works of an instructor like Peter Hahn. I also started watching Anthony Chong Jones, Robot Pencil on YouTube, and he's another guy who does like these really exploratory drawings, very fantastical drawings. That have structure and form and volume while being very abstract. And that is something that I admire. It's a skill that I have not developed yet, and it's something that I seek. And for me, I feel like I get more by chasing structure than I do by just exploring. But as you can see here, just by changing my approach and having an exploratory line, I moved from gestural to structural. Now, there's still places in here where, like, if you just look at going from eyebrow to eyebrow and then going down to cheekbone, and then putting his nose in between, that the structure of this figure still is not great. But that's also me beating myself up in the sense that it's decent. It's decent. It has structure. For a gestural drawing, it has a lot of structure. Is it feel like it's carved out of stone or modeled from Blender? No, because it was a gestury, scribbly drawing that I kind of built up. But when I look at some of the artists that I mentioned before, they have drawings that are gestural and scribbly, but they do feel like they were like modeled in Blender. So that, I think, is what I'm pursuing with the structural stuff. But Paul, you gave me a really good reminder just in terms of like always remembering that the choices I'm making about my approach to drawing, that there are very definite benefits to challenging those approaches or intentionally switching them up. So, Paul, thank you for that. Okay, we have put in a pretty good session here. There's a lot for me to go over, a lot for me to redraw. Like I said, the big head drawing, looking up here, this is something, if I can dig out, figure out what box my skull is in, because I still haven't unpacked my studio, but if I can find that skull, this is a prime candidate for posing a skull in this angle and doing a bunch of sketches until I understand that better. Let's see here. All right. Herman says, I kind of draw that way. I will draw blobs and shapes and fit the human anatomy within it while taking into account perspective, foreshortening when sketching. Makes it more dynamic. Yeah, agreed. There's a lot of dynamicism to get from that. And let's see here. And Paul says, man, you got it. That face flows. Well, thank you, Paul. I'm going for it. You inspired me. Herman says, man, I'm about to pull up some Sean Murphy art and make a folder, possibly spend an hour when I can just tracing his vehicle design. I struggle so much in drawing cars. Like I want it to have character. Well, you know, that is exactly how I look at Sean Gordon Murphy's work, is he draws vehicles as characters. And I think that that's a very unique way of approaching it, as opposed to drawing it like it's a physical inanimate object, is trying to imbue some of that personality. I think that he's somebody really good to look at for that. So yeah, definitely do. I agree. I should do some. I mean, I don't have vehicles in my work a lot, but if I could draw them like Sean Gordon Murphy, I probably would. All right, so Paul says, thanks for today's stream, GB. Great fun. Thank you for sharing my drawing. Honored. More than happy to share it. I learned a lot from you and from looking at your drawing. It's a two-way street. In fact, it's not even a two-way street. It's a traffic circle. And we all come in and we share, and hopefully we all take something away from it. And I'm glad that you were part of it today. All right, guys. Again, if you know anybody that you think would enjoy these kind of art conversations, hit that share button. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. All of you better hit the like button. All of you. Get in there. And whoops, hang on. Got that. All right. On that note, if you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page. All right, guys. Great time as always. Great art and creative conversations. I always appreciate hanging out with you guys. This was super fun. Thank you so much. That's it for now. Go be creative.